Well, we're so blessed, as I told you this morning, in our church to have 8 families who have given their lives to the Lord to serve Him in foreign mission work somewhere in the world. And the newest and latest of them is the Evans family. And of course, you've known them through the years. Sean and Kristen been here a long time. Kristen taught in our school for 5 years or something like that, a long time. So all of our young people know her well. Stand up, if you will, you and the kids there, and everybody will see the family. And you're going too, aren't you? So, well, we're proud of y'all. We want you to know that. We are sure praying for you during this time. And you may be seated, and thank you. And I'm going to ask Sean if he would come, just open up his heart and talk to y'all, tell you what he's been doing, what he is doing, what he's going to be doing in the days ahead when they're leaving. And it's so hard to get with people right now. So I don't know how to tell you to get with them. So if you can't get with them, the next best thing would be to pray for them and send money. Okay? You know, you still don't have the COVID has destroyed the sense of humor of people. But at any rate, I don't know how to tell you to be able to get with them. I wish we could stand them up out there and let everybody pass by and shake their hand and hug them as they get ready to leave. But it's just not possible. One of them laughed a while ago and said, I guess we'll put them behind glass like Santa Claus and let everybody come by, you know. But at any rate, I know you want to be able to appropriately say goodbye to them as they go to the field this time. And I want you to just hear from them. So, Sean, if you will, come ahead. Speak to our people tonight. God bless you, brother.
Good evening. I was going to introduce our family, but preacher took care of that for me, so I've got a few extra minutes tonight. Now, last time I was up here, I mentioned Sierra Leone, and I mentioned a singer. Like some people ask us, hey, I thought Sierra Leone was a singer. But we know that Sierra Leone's not a singer, so we don't have to do that whole bit. But what we do know is that Sierra Leone's in Africa, right? Y'all know that? Y'all are a pretty well-educated group. Now, if I were to show you a map, could you find it? There it is. Got a map for you. Sierra Leone is in Western Africa, and you can see it's a little small country right there. And the population of Sierra Leone is about 8 million people. And now you can see how obscure it is. We share a border with Liberia. It's about the size of South Carolina in landmass. So that's a lot of people, 8 million people in this tiny country. And the vast majority of them would be in the capital city of Freetown, which is where we're going to be based at. Now, how many of you have ever heard Mike Pepper come in here before and maybe share the work? Can I get some hands? Some of you, okay, good number of people are familiar with Brother Pepper there, which is who we're going to be working with. But what I thought that I would do tonight is just kind of share a little bit, give you a refresher of the country, and then and let you know what we're going to be doing there on the field. So as we go to the people, what about the people? What is the culture like? So I told you there's 8 million people in Sierra Leone. Well, Sierra Leone's a third world country. So 70% of this population will live on less than $1 a day. Meaning it is extreme poverty. They have a history of civil war. So through the 90s, there was a brutal civil war. Many of you are you familiar with the term blood diamonds? A lot of that stemmed out of Sierra Leone and funded that brutal war there. Of course, the Ebola crisis from a few years back, that stemmed out of Sierra Leone. So you had a lot of few thousand people lost their lives to that in Sierra Leone. It's really devastated this country. The life expectancy is around 50 years old. 50 years old. They have poor health care and poor education. And on top of that, religiously, if we can go to that next slide, religiously, they would be considered about anywhere between 60 and 70% Muslim. Now, they're a very nominal faith. They're not radicalized. But you know, Islam is steady on the move. You know, that's the second largest religion in the world. That consumes 24% of our global population. That's almost 2 billion people that adhere to Islam. And 85% of those would be considered unreached. As you can see the statistics there, of 8 million people, only 5% would be considered evangelical Christian in Sierra Leone. Only 5% out of 8 million people. Now, they do have some tribal practices as well. You know, even though we're in the capital city, it's more urban. A lot of times you think about those things being like out in the bush or in the jungles and all those things, but it's very prevalent right in the capital city. So an example would be when when Chris and I were in the country doing a survey trip, so we're in one of the churches, and I spoke at one morning, then I went over to another one that was having a celebration of some sort, and as we're sitting there and we're talking with the people, I'm talking to one of the national pastors, and this young lady comes walking down approaching us, and she's got this big grin on her face. You can see joy on her face, but as she began to get closer, you could see these just gruesome burn scars down one side of her body, down her face. You can see she has a sleeveless dress on. You can see her arm and her leg. And man, I just had to ask. I asked the pastor, I said, what happened to her? He said, let me tell you about this young lady. He said, whenever she was a small child, she was having seizures, like a form of, like epilepsy, I guess. And her mom took her to go see a witch doctor in the city. So this woman would probably say she was Muslim, but she's going to go see a witch doctor, and she may go to a charismatic church on Sunday, and then may come to the Baptist church. They kind of mix a lot of that in. But so this lady takes her young daughter to see a witch doctor, and the witch doctor looks at her and he says, okay, the diagnosis is she's plagued with evil spirits. She has evil spirits on her, so here's the prescription. We're going to light this fire, get the coals good and hot. He does that, then he just throws the child on the fire. And that's where the burning came from. I was like, man. I said, well, what happened next? He said, well, somebody in our community told her about one of the churches that had been planted by a missionary and said, can you help us? Because after a couple of weeks, infection begins to set in an environment like this, right? So the mom takes her to one of the churches planted by Brother Pepper, and they adhere, they clean the wounds, they redress the wounds, and then they shared the gospel with her. She got saved. After she got saved, you fast forward these years, now you have a young lady, she's probably 18 to 20 years old, somewhere in there, serving in children's ministry, but she's also helping lead in the youth ministry in one of the church plants there. All because a missionary went to this part of the world. So all these things thrown together, things seem hopeless. We know that Jesus Christ is the hope of the world, right? It doesn't matter whether you're in the Philippines or Sierra Leone or right here in Florence, South Carolina. Without Jesus Christ, we're all hopeless. Every single one of us. So what does the harvest look like in Sierra Leone? You heard the story about this young lady. In this passage right here, I love this passage. I love to reflect on it. No doubt, many missionaries come through here and speak on this exact passage. Jesus here in Matthew chapter 9, verses 37 through 38, says, then he said to his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. There's a harvest in Sierra Leone. Many of you have seen the numbers and heard the numbers and seen or read ministry updates from Brother Pepper. But I'm here to tell you that harvest is still real in Sierra Leone. The gospel is moving rapidly despite all the challenges in this country. Just for instance, let's go to this slide here. Right before the COVID pandemic kicked off, one of the things Mike was influential in was getting a youth camp ministry out there through another entity. And this was right before COVID. They had permission to bus kids in from these Muslim schools and the different schools there. You can see there were 506 Muslim students that attended this camp. They take them out, they play games, and do like a day youth camp, and they'll feed everybody, and then they bring them up under a pavilion and simply preach the gospel. The gospel's preached. And just out of that one camp, you had 319 professions of faith. Then you had the assistant principal, the principal, and 6 teachers get saved at that camp. People are receptive and open to the gospel. There is a harvest in Sierra Leone, but you notice the passage also says that the laborers are few. There's very, very few missionaries even in this country. Very few. And so we're going to work alongside Mike Pepper and Diane there. Now, before we play this, I've got a short video here. Before we play this video, I do want to give a disclaimer that these aren't the same kids that are in this, that are photoed in this. So they'll do like follow-up things. But I want you to see the difference in these kids here. I don't know how good you can see how well you can see the photo, but there's no smiles on their faces, and they're just very solemn, sitting there quietly. And so the difference Jesus can make. Let's listen to these kids sing. I'd say the gospel's moving through this country. These kids are singing praises to Jesus. If you notice, they're singing in English. English is the official language of the country. So we don't have to learn another language. You can preach out of the same Bible we preach from here, and they understand it. And I mean, I'm bad enough at English, so I hate to butcher somebody else's language. So we're blessed in that. So you have an English-speaking country where they're receptive to the gospel. We have a very real opportunity to reach this entire country for Jesus Christ and impact Western Africa. I've seen it with my own eyes, and you guys have read several of the reports. So what are our plans? What does that look like? What are we going to be doing? Well, obviously, we have the Great Commission here. This is the Christ Commission in the book of Mark, where he says, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Well, that's the big vision, right? That's the mission objective. Now, the ministry in Sierra Leone and our roles there, the way the Lord has worked things and has worked and used Mike is he's been able to plant about a dozen churches, training and equipping national pastors, been able to start a Bible college to where this training goes. And then you have Christian elementary schools that have been started. It does a lot of military outreach and the training of the chaplains of the Sierra Leone military. I don't know how many people were here. This has probably been maybe 10 years ago. I'm not certain. Mike had brought the chief chaplain from the Sierra Leone military here to the church to be baptized. And he came and he spoke to us all, and he was dressed in his full uniform and all that. There's a lot of work with the military there. And then there's also the youth camp ministry. So our plan is to come alongside Mike, because many of you know Chris and I, we don't come out of a ministry background per se. So we'll have the opportunity to work with Mike. He'll be able to mentor us and be able to work with us in transitioning to the field. But our main objective is to train nationals and plant churches. We're church planting missionaries. And so I'll be starting out in the Bible college, working there, and Kristen will be educating our children, and then also maybe in an administrative role with the Christian elementary schools. And of course, there's a million other things to do in Sierra Leone as well, especially with so few people working there. So as we move into the new year, the mission hasn't changed. You just heard Preacher talk about it. If we can go to the next slide. The mission hasn't changed. Despite of all the challenges, despite of COVID, despite of whatever else may be going on just in our country and around the world, we still have the same objective, and that's reaching people for Christ and making disciples that look like Jesus Christ. So one of the ways that you can really be a part of the work is to pray for us. You can pray. We brought some prayer cards and put them on a table out there. Grab a prayer card and pray for us, pray for our families, pray for the people of Sierra Leone, that the people will remain receptive, and pray for your other missionaries as well. And then continue to faithfully give. Continue to give right here. You guys have been so faithful in your offerings, even with low attendance and the way the pandemic has affected everything, the faithfulness of giving. Continue to give. Continue to give to support the ministries, not just abroad, but right here locally. And I can't think of a better investment for all eternity than a gospel-centered church like the Florence Baptist Temple. I mean, it's everywhere. This is gospel-centered, reaching people for Christ. The cross is the focal point time as you walk in here. Then you have the lighthouse over here in the corner, and you have the sower out front. Man, what a great ministry to give to that cares about reaching the lost in the community and around the world. So you can give. And then you can go. You can be your part. You can do your part of being a missionary. You know, the only difference between you guys sitting right here and us and the Buxtons or whoever else, the missionary on the foreign field, is location. It's not mission objective. We're to be soul winners, to be reaching people for Christ. So you can be a goer. Man, I just heard a preacher mention Team 13-3. What a great opportunity to be a goer and be a missionary right here. If you're sitting here tonight and you're not involved with that, you ought to be involved with it. If you're a Christian, you need to be involved in that. Go on mission trips. Man, we've been in so many churches. Go on mission trips. No other church, when I talk, does and promotes mission trips for you to go on and know how to pray for your missionaries like this one does right here. And they even help you with the cost of it. Go on a mission trip. I don't know if you guys have any plan for 2021. Man, be a part of the work. Be a part of what we're doing in Sierra Leone and what the Buxtons are doing and what all your missionaries are doing. By praying for them, continuing to faithfully give, and by being a missionary right here in Florence. Thank you all so much. Continue to pray that we'll be able to get to the field in January. Our tickets are for January 17th. That's when we're planning on launching into Sierra Leone. But with the way things are kind of going and in Europe, because we have to go through there and things like that, just pray that those flights stay available and that we're still able to go on that date, because I just put a nice deposit down on a shipping container. So we'd kind of like to not leave our stuff sitting over there. So please pray for those things. Thank you all so much.
Sean, you're leaving on the 17th, hopefully. And so that must be new. I haven't talked to you about it. Are they shutting down some of the transportation?
Well, one of the things that we're seeing is that the problem is there's no direct flights into Sierra Leone, so we have to go through. There's two options: you can go through Brussels or go through France. And our flights are through Brussels, and so Europe is starting to crack down on some things. And then Sierra Leone is starting to change a little bit of their policies. They haven't closed the country yet, and the flights haven't been canceled yet. And so we're just like closely monitoring that, because I don't know if you guys have seen in the news or whatever about this new strain of COVID in Europe and all this. It's kind of affecting some things. So we're just praying that it really doesn't affect our flights.
How's your mother?
You know, she's doing well. It's going to be a long process for her healing. She has a lot of therapists coming in. We were able to spend Christmas over there. She's shown some positive signs of being able to possibly begin to eat food again. She's on a feeding tube right now, but she's starting to be able to eat a little bit, small things. And so we just know that it's going to be a long road ahead for her to recover, hopefully.
You people know his mother, Karen, and Gary, of course, has been her caretaker. My, what a job that man has done taking care of his wife. But also, Kristen's mother has had a stroke, and so it's a very difficult time for y'all. Both of your mothers are very, very ill. Their health is very tenuous, and yet they've been preparing, and God's called them for this. This is why you need to pray for your missionaries, and it needs to be serious praying and specific praying. So many people, Lord, bless the missionaries. Well, we don't need that. We need for you to pray for their parents. We need for you to pray for their safety. They're going to a country where we have to be concerned, because the medical care there is very, very poor, very primitive. Mike has told me about it. We sent them hospital equipment, you remember. And so there's a lot to pray about. And so when we put their name on the prayer sheet on Wednesday night, man, it ought to be more than just bless the Evans family. You see, there's specific needs. We always put a little excerpt from their letter in there. Every week in the Wednesday night program, there's a little excerpt from a letter, because we really do need to hold up our missionaries and support them specifically with our prayers. You'll be here with us for a couple of weeks, but we'll probably talk to you. And I wish we could work a way where people could, every one of them, come by and individually speak to you. I don't know if we'll be able to do that or not, but now you know a little bit more about them. Pick up the prayer card. How much do we support you a month?
You guys support us at $500 a month.
$500 a month. Well, we're going to be increasing that some, and he told me a list of things they need. We were actually going to try to buy him a car, and he went out and some other church gave him a car, so that's great for us, amen? And we need to pray for more of those churches. So.
There's always a need. There's always a need.
God bless you, Sean.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, and then we have Mark tonight. And let's have the Buxton family stand. I see you have your brother with you, huh, Jesse? Well, wonderful. We welcome you. It's good to have you. And they'll be going back to the Philippines, and you're going sooner than they are. So I'll let you tell them about it. But God bless y'all. We love you. We pray for you. And it's good to have you as a part of our missionary approach here. Come ahead, if you will, Mark.
Preacher, I need a new car in Manila. Thought I'd throw that out there. I'm just kidding. We don't need a new car. Not right now, anyway. Well, we are flying back a little bit earlier than they are. Our scheduled date is January 12th to go back to Manila. And I will just echo what Sean said. Pray for us. My prayer right now is that we could go back. We want to go back. We need to go back. But things are getting a little hairy around the world if you've been watching the news. The Philippines has shut down travel from the UK. They're not going to allow anybody from the UK in for the whole month of January. I read this afternoon in the news, Japan has shut down travel, incoming travel for any country for the whole month of January. So things are, kind of feels like March of this year. Things are starting to tighten down. But we're praying that we can go back in January. And I really appreciate this opportunity to just share an update with you about what we're doing and what the Lord's done this year in our ministry. And it's been a difficult year, 2020, for ministry in the Philippines, but God has done some incredible things. And I just want to review for you a little bit about our ministry and how we work over there. Maybe some of you are even new to the church since we were really here last time on furlough, which is incredible to me. And I want to be able to clue you in as to what we do. And if you're not new to the church, give you a reminder of what we do. I'll show you a picture of how we describe our ministry. I can use this graphic to describe our ministry to somebody in 1 minute. We call this our ministry pipeline. And there's 4 words that really describe our ministry and our goals. We want to reach people with the gospel. You see there at the top. We want to see them renewed in their life as they're discipled, as they grow in their relationship with Christ. And then we want to see them be raised up to be servants, to be leaders in their church, and to reach others. And then we want to release them out into ministry. We want to release them out into the world. And this is not a new idea. You can find it in the New Testament. We've just put 4 words around it, and it's the same thing that we do here at FBT. We want to reach the lost world, and our end goal is church planting. Everything we do with our team, we want to plant new churches, and we work with a wonderful missionary team. Our ministry is called Global Surge. We get to work with my wife's parents, some other family, and also many other missionaries. And God is doing some incredible things. We have planted 50 churches to date in Metro Manila and other mega cities around the world. And God continues to move. I want to share a story with you that describes this pipeline. Okay, so get that pipeline in your mind. You got the lost world on one side. You got church planting on the other side. We want to reach people, and eventually we want to release them out into ministry. I'll show you another picture of a family here. And the young man that you see there, his name is Rodell. And Rodell has become a very good friend of mine, and he has an incredible story. About 13, 14 years ago, Rodell was a member of a gang in Manila, in inner city Manila. And he was involved in any kind of gang activity you can imagine. If you could think it, he was involved in it. Drugs, alcohol, violence, everything you can name. That was his life in a gang. And he got invited to come to one of our youth camps in the Philippines. He got invited by one of our churches to join a free youth camp. And you've heard about our youth camp before. We've talked about it before. Rodell came to that youth camp, and he heard the gospel, and he trusted Christ, got saved, and his life was changed. And his life began to change when he got back to Manila because he got involved in that local church. He got involved in the programs there. He joined a Bible study, a small group Bible study, and began to grow. And God began to change his outlook, change his life. And he began to be involved in the church very heavily. He started to lead one of those Bible studies, and he would invite his gang friends to come to his group so that it would grow. And he started reaching out in that community. Just an incredible story. And then after a few years, Rodell said to one of our pastors, he said, well, I feel God's calling me into ministry. I want to train more. So Rodell enrolled in our Bible college, Baptist Bible College, Asia. He began to study, and he finished 4 years of Bible college and did a great job, graduated, and began serving the Lord in the church there. A few years after that, Rodell came and joined my church plant team, and he's been working with me for almost 5 years now in our church in Marikina City that I told you about before. And Rodell and his family have been helping us to plant that church, and we've reached many, many people in our church there. Well, about, almost a year ago now, end of last year, Rodell came to me, and he said, Pastor Mark, can I talk to you? Now, that always scares me a little bit when somebody says that, and that's all the information I get. So I said, sure, Rodell, we can talk. And we sat down, and Rodell said, I've been praying a lot, and my wife and I have been talking, and he talked to me before about this, but he said, Pastor Mark, I'm sure that God is calling me to be a church planter, to go out and plant a church. Will you help me do that? And I said, well, I'll think about it. No, that was a joke. I said, yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. That's our whole goal. That's what we want to do. So the plan was January 2020, Rodell, we were going to send him out of our church. We sent him and a team from our church. Part of the church planting process, you lose some people in a good way, gained by losing. And so we sent out a handful of people with him to plant his new church in another area of the city. That was in January of 2020, planting a new church. Does anybody remember what happened in March of 2020? It's kind of hard to do ministry when you can't go out and see people. Kind of hard to reach people when you can't have a worship service, as we figured out here in the United States. And so we get to March, and I'm mentoring him, I'm coaching him, we're planting this new church out of our church, and March hits and things start to shut down, and we realize this is not going to be a couple-week endeavor. This is going to be a long-term shutdown. In the Philippines, the shutdown was very immediate, very sudden, and very, very strict. And it really devastated a lot of people, devastated the economy. We had to shut our church services down, weren't allowed to meet at all. For about 6 months, we couldn't meet. So he couldn't meet. We weren't even supposed to go outside for the first couple of months. So it was very hard for him to stay connected with people in that community that he was trying to reach. But even though I'm scratching my head and praying and saying, Lord, what are we going to do with this? God had a plan that we knew nothing about in March. The situation in the Philippines when COVID hit was, as I said, very dire. And some of that is an economic reason. The need for relief in the Philippines, food relief and help for people, became very real and very apparent very quickly. Most people in the Philippines live on a hand-to-mouth basis, a daily wage basis. Whatever they make on Monday at their job, which may be $5 or $10, that's what they're going to live on Tuesday and Wednesday. So you had an entire city that shut down. You had all of the public transportation shut down in Metro Manila, a city of over 20 million people. Instantly, overnight, every taxi driver, every bus driver, every jeepney driver that we had, every train conductor, everybody shut down. All of the malls were closed, all of the restaurants were closed, literally every industry to a screeching halt. And the difference in the Philippines is that there really was no government relief package coming. There was no stimulus check coming for the Filipinos. It was a dire situation. So our ministry began to give out relief, and FBT had a part in that, helping us to get relief to people. And we began to go out. We went out, my wife and I, my kids went out some. We went out literally for months, taking food to people. We took hot meals to people. We took food packs to people. And we just started meeting people's physical need, that need that was really there in their life. I got a couple of pictures that you can see of us doing that. That's some of our church members packing rice packs and packing relief goods that we were going to take out and walk around and deliver to folks. And we just began to go around and pass that out. The next picture just shows us delivering those relief packs. And I can't tell you it's kind of like Preacher was saying the other day, the joy that we get from giving and doing that was incredible as we met people's need. But the joy on their faces and their families as they receive food from us, from this church that they didn't know. And that's a picture of Pastor Rodell right there, and he was taking out food to people in his community. And as he went out, this is incredible to me, one of the only reasons we were allowed to go outside was to take relief goods. The government there, the city government, gave us permission to go out and do this relief because they needed help. Otherwise, we weren't supposed to go out. So we used that as an excuse to get outside and to see people and to minister to people. So when we took the food to them, of course, we also took the gospel to them. And we tried to have gospel conversations with many, many people. We were doing that in our church, and Pastor Rodell was doing that in his church location. Remember, he's planting a church. He's trying to reach new people in this area, just has a handful of people. So he began to take this relief out every day, every week, and began to reach people. And we have seen literally dozens and dozens of people saved, over 100 people saved, through this food outreach during 2020, during the pandemic. And this is what I believe, I think it's inarguable. We have reached people with the gospel that we would not have reached otherwise if COVID had not have taken place. Now, I'm not going to, pray for another COVID pandemic, but I'm telling you, God used the pandemic for good. We shared the gospel with people in the Philippines. They never would have been home. They would have been out working. But when we knocked on their door, they were home. And we could talk to them, we could sit with them and share the gospel with them. I asked Pastor Rodell to give me some numbers on how many people they've reached in their church so far. Now, these are people that they've shared the gospel with, they've followed up with, and they are now active in their church. Okay, these numbers, these aren't just people that prayed a prayer, standing at the doorstep, and they never saw them again. These are people that are coming to their church now, coming to their groups, their Bible studies. He has 95 youth and adults, 95 teenagers and adults that are coming. They've got 30 children that come to a little children's program that they're able to do now from the community, 30 kids. Of those groups, he started 21 Bible studies throughout the city, 21 different groups. And that's a look at one family there that they've reached. That's Pastor Rodell and his wife Grace in the front there. And that's a family that they've been able to reach, and they're hosting a group in their home there and doing a Bible study in their home. They've got 44 of these people that are involved in discipleship every week. 44 people that are involved in growing in their faith in the Lord that may have never heard the gospel if it wasn't for COVID, if it wasn't for the relief that we had to give out. So I want to encourage you tonight. 2020's been a difficult year, and that's an understatement. But the fact is, COVID did not surprise the Lord. And God is on a mission in the Philippines. And God is reaching people in the Philippines. Every time I think about it or talk about it, I'm just blown away. Because you know what? That was not plan A for us. I wasn't planning on spending 3 or 4 months this year giving out rice bags to people. I wasn't planning on doing that. I joke with people. I preached a sermon in January in our church in 2020 about the power of vision was my sermon. And it was good, preacher. I had 4 sermons, and I preached about vision. And in the last sermon I laid out, these are the 10 things we're going to do in 2020 this year, right? Well, by March, all that went out the window. Okay, all of it went out the window. But God had another plan. And God has reached people with the gospel when we were faithful to take it out. I'm so encouraged by the effort here at FBT with Team 13-3. And you know what it really is? It's really about finding a way to get the gospel out. That's what I tell my team. I teach them that axiom: find a way. Don't let an excuse or a barrier come in front of you. Find a way to do it. If one door closes, look for the other door that's going to be open, because God is ready to reach people with the gospel. And you know what? The same thing is happening and will continue to happen here in Florence. I believe that. 2021, I believe, is going to be a good year for ministry as people have realized the impact and the need in their life for a relationship with God. As I was thinking about sharing tonight, I thought about a verse, and to me this verse really says what the Lord has done in the Philippines, and I believe what He's going to continue to do. If you got your Bible, would you look at Ephesians chapter 3 and verse number 20. Ephesians chapter 3 and verse number 20. And to me, this just encapsulates everything that God has done in our ministry this year. Ephesians 3 and verse 20. Now unto Him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Unto Him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus throughout all ages, world without end. Amen. He's able to do abundantly more than we can even think, we can even plan, if we'll trust Him, if we'll have faith that He can do it. God is working, and we're looking forward to 2021. That's why I'm praying we can get back by January, because we believe that these churches are just going to continue to grow. I'm excited to get back, and Pastor Rodell's going to, Lord willing, have a big service on the weekend after we get back, January, whatever that Sunday is. And I'm excited to be there, and I'm excited to see that service of a couple hundred people that were reached during the pandemic, that came to know Christ during COVID. God's on the move, and it's an exciting thing. I hope you're encouraged by that tonight. I'm going to show you another screen. I think I've got one more slide up there. Now, I have no idea if that's going to work, but if you know what that is, you can get your phone out and you can try to scan that. It works in some places. Some of you might be too far away in the back. But if you want to get your phone out and scan that, that's our newsletter, or you can type in that website at the top. It's myname.com/newsletters. You can sign up to get our monthly newsletter that we send out. Many of you already get it. Many of you reply to me when I send it out. We send it to many, many people all over the country. But if you want to stay updated with what we're doing, sign up for our newsletter. And we try to post an update every 6 to 8 weeks or so, and keep people informed. So it's been good to be home. We've been home for about 4 months since September. But we're ready to go back and see what the Lord's going to do in 2021. Preacher, thank you.
Well, Mark, you know these guys, they always, okay? It's just sort of the Baptist way, I guess, you know. Well, do you have any needs? And I'll tell you one thing I've learned about Mark: don't ask him, because he's always got a need. And he used to call me and say, "Preacher, could you send us $300? And then could you send us $1,000? Well, he wants a car. He wants a church building, and that's all he wants. But tell him real quickly about what you're going to do there with what your plan is.
Yeah, we are. So in our main church, the church we planted 7 years ago, we've just been renting facilities, and right now we're on the second floor of a building, and we've really outgrown it with all the ministries that we have. We have a Christian school there. We also have a campus of our Bible college with over 50 students. And I believe the Lord has moved us to have our own facility, and it's time for us to have a building. And so in 2021, we're going to commence with a building project. So the first thing we have to do is buy the land, and the land is about $200,000. The property's not cheap in Manila, and it's hard to come by an empty lot, but we found a couple in our city that would be suitable. So that's really the first phase. We're going to buy the land. and then we're going to begin the building. We're probably going to build it in stages. It'll be a 3 or 4 story building, but we'll build the first floor, use that for worship for a while, and then as we have the funds, maybe in a year or two, build the second floor and so on. But a building is just a tool for ministry. That's all it is. A building is not the church. A building is a tool for the church, and I firmly believe if we're able to complete that, it's going to help our churches grow even more, and we're going to send out more missionaries and more church planners from our church.
So Mark talked to me about it, and we're not going to give a specific thing here tonight. We're going to kind of assess after our Christmas offering and so on. But we want to help him invest in that and help him in a substantial way. He's really just starting this, as I understand it, right? You don't have any money yet toward that. And he's going to do it in phases. And we sure want to be a significant part of that. So when you give and you read your finance reports and see what we're trying to do, you know, and we're planning on, Mark, we'll help you in a as significant a way as we possibly can. We want to see you get that building. I was in Manila years ago, and I've never seen such a city. I mean, you can't imagine what 20 million people look like. New York is 8 million people. And you go there, and it just is an unbelievable sight. And for them to be able to obtain any land is almost a miracle, almost a godsend. So the $200,000 for a little lot, how big is the lot?
The lot is almost 300 square meters, which somebody better than math have to do that in square feet. We use meters in the Philippines, so that's about, it's big enough to build a building that'll seat about 500 people in it, is what it's big enough to do.
And that'd be the whole land mass,
yes,
too?
Yeah. The building's going to take up the whole thing. We'll put a parking structure around the back, and eventually, not to get too detailed, but eventually the first floor may become a parking garage, and we'll park cars there and then move the worship to the second floor.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you kind of know what Mark's plan is. You have prayer cards out there as well, or do you?
We don't. We ran out on our last trip, so I ran out of prayer cards.
Okay, you just have to write his name and put it on the front of the refrigerator and pray for him that way. Okay? Mark, thank you for being with us. God bless you, brother. Won't you stand with me, if you will, please?